Hi there, I'm Danny Flexen. Welcome to the latest edition of SecondsOut FLEXpectations. I'm here every Thursday, 4:30 PM, usually to look ahead to the boxing action of the weekend to come. But with boxing pretty much shut down in the UK, or completely shut down in the UK for January, and not loads going on across the pond, all due respect to Joe Smith Jr. and his last-minute replacement challenger, Stephen Jeffrard, we're actually going to look this time at the lawsuit between Bob Arum and Terence Crawford, something that came to light yesterday, where Crawford filed a suit for $10 million in damages against Arum, alleging revolting racial bias against the veteran promoter. The crux of Crawford's argument seems to be that Arum wasn't au fait or sufficiently skilled in the way to promote fighters of colour, and discriminated against them in comparison to his other fighters. So this is something that there'll be a lot of detail in the lawsuit that hasn't been revealed yet, and it's hard to kind of dissect it and go through the weeds. But we can look at some simple facts, and Arum has responded to the lawsuit, at least briefly, called it a malicious extortion attempt in his response, typically pithy, rambunctious response from Bob Arum. And a lot of people didn't really see this coming, I don't think. The two split back in November after Crawford's win over Sean Porter, very, very impressive. But Crawford had said then he was going to become a free agent. He didn't like the fact that he couldn't make the fight with Errol Spence, who's affiliated with PBC, while he was still under contract to Arum, so decided to become a free agent in the hopes of getting that fight, at least initially. But it seemed like a pretty amicable split. You know, Arum had been castigated in some parts for his comments about Crawford, that he'd lost enough money on his previous 3 fights to buy a lovely home in Beverly Hills, which maybe not the best comments to make if you're looking to maintain a healthy relationship with your fighter, but perhaps true as well. But who is to blame for Crawford not becoming a pay-per-view star seems to be the main focus really of the lawsuit, and perhaps how it will be decided why he's not as big as his skills perhaps merit, and whose responsibility it is to make him that kind of status of pay-per-view star. Now, Crawford, undisputable that he is not a pay-per-view or a big pay-per-view attraction as it stands. He's been on pay-per-view 3 times. Victor Postal was his pay-per-view debut, which infamously did around 50,000 buys, which is an absolute disaster, dumpster fire, as I believe our friends across the Atlantic like to say. So yeah, not great for that. But then the Amir Khan fight, heavily promoted, it has to be said, by Top Rank and ESPN, still only did, and there's varying reports, but around 150,000 buys, which if Crawford was kind of growing and on that trajectory, 50,000, 150,000, and Amir Khan, for most people, was considered past his best even at that point in 2019, you would think that as Crawford fought better people and time went on, he was promoted, the next one would do even better. Well, that did not prove to be the case. The fight against Porter was his next bout on pay-per-view, but it was only available on ESPN Plus app, whereas the Khan fight had been available both through traditional means and digitally. So Porter, great fight, no it is, but Porter had already fought Spence, of course, and some other big names that come up short on a number of those occasions, albeit very, very close fights for the most part. Yeah, that fight did a reported 130,000 buys, and Crawford a few weeks later was on a podcast and actually talked about how difficult it was for some fans, particularly of the older generation, maybe that will strike a chord with Arum, that it was difficult for them to access the fight via the ESPN Plus app. They didn't really know how to use an app. They just wanted to kick back on the sofa, switch on their TV remote control and watch the fight via traditional means, which I can completely understand. I mean, I think Crawford cited a man in their 50s. I'm not quite there yet, but even I much prefer to watch boxing on the big screen TV than I do on an app or on my phone or on my laptop. Although obviously I know there's ways of casting it to the TV and so on. I'm not completely ignorant technologically, but The point is that you want to, when you're putting a fight for broadcast, you want as many people to watch it as possible. You want to make it as accessible as possible. And Crawford may have had a valid point about the Porter fight not being that. Still, you would have expected it to do more than 135,000 buys, considering the resumes and the talents of the two boxers involved, and the styles as well, because the styles always suggested it would be an exciting fight to watch. So, Bob Arum's made no secret of the fact that he believes Crawford could have done a lot more to promote himself. A lot of the fighters he's been compared to, including Spence, and obviously Floyd Mayweather most famously, did do a lot more, and we have to say that Mayweather did this after buying out what he called a slave contract from Top Rank, or an offer from Top Rank. He bought himself out of his Top Rank contract and went on to make billions. So you have to say that Mayweather certainly did the right thing in his case, but he never alleged, slave contract obviously has its own connotations, but he never alleged that Bob Arum had particular racial bias towards him during his time at Top Rank. But the point is, Mayweather promoted himself to an extent that he became the richest and most famous boxer of his generation. Crawford's a different type of character. You know, he's intensely confident in his own abilities, but he's not someone who talks a lot. He's not an extrovert. He's not someone who likes to do lots of interviews, and I've interviewed him a few times in the past. He's not the most outgoing kind of personality, kind of keeps his answers short, rarely seems animated about anything. And some fighters just like that. Some fighters, Andre Ward's a good example in recent times, just like to let their fists do the talking, their performances speak for them. But in an evolving kind of digital multimedia age, it becomes ever more important for fighters to promote themselves outside of their skills. And I think Arum has a valid point there regarding Crawford, that he could have done a lot more over the years. It may not come naturally to him, but I think sometimes you have to kind of force yourself out of your comfort zone in different realms to really maximise your earning potential. So he has a point there. But does Crawford and his lawsuit have a point? Because that's what the judge will ultimately decide. Now, Arum can point to successes with other African-American fighters and other fighters. He talks about in his response that he's always been a champion of fighters of colour and fighters of Latino heritage. And I think Crawford's legal team will have to find other people either currently under contract to Top Rank or have previously worked with Top Rank who can back up and support Crawford's claims. I'm not sure how easy or difficult that will be, but I think that will be a crucial part of how the case is decided. On the surface, it could seem like sour grapes. You know, Crawford's still struggling, it seems, to nail down a Spence fight. Spence is going to be fighting Yordenis Ugas next for 3 of the 4 major belts at welterweight. Crawford, of course, obviously has the other one. And may just be unhappy with what he may feel are years of his career wasted with Arum. But from a purse perspective, and Arum's been quite vocal about how much money he's lost on Crawford, which from a promotional standpoint isn't great, but does illustrate that Crawford has been well paid for what haven't been the best fights. And it's not just Arum's fault that his fighter hasn't enjoyed the best competition at 147 pounds. The vast majority of top fighters in that weight class are promoted by Premier Boxing champions, including Porter during the previous period, but came across the Top Rank for the last fight. But the likes of, Keith Thurman, Manny Pacquiao, Spence himself, of course, they're the top fighters that a lot of people would like to see Crawford face, and they're all affiliated with PBC, who don't tend to work very much with Top Rank and Bob Arum. Now, you can make a whole other video or a series about why that relationship doesn't work, but it does show that Arum kind of had his hands tied to an extent. And to pay Crawford the likes of, what did he get, $4 million guarantee for the fight with Kell Brook, who most people felt by that point was past his best, and he didn't stand much of a chance against Crawford. To give him a $4 million guarantee for that, not only does that show why Arum lost money, but it doesn't seem like he's discriminating against Crawford. If anything, it feels like he's overcompensating, at least in that example. But could Crawford have made more money? Yes. Could he have fought better opponents? Yes. But how much of that is due to Arum? And more importantly, because we're not, the lawsuit doesn't allege that Arum failed in his promotional duties. What it kind of alleges is that Arum discriminated against Crawford and could have promoted him better, didn't promote him as well as he should have because of his race and Arum's lack of skill in promoting fighters of colour. And it seems, again, on the surface, that there's very little evidence to support that, but as the lawsuit evolves, we shall see. Crawford obviously believes it. He wouldn't have launched a lawsuit otherwise. You know, he's a wealthy guy. He doesn't need $10 million in damages particularly, so he must really believe in what he's saying, and maybe there's a lot of stuff to come out that we don't yet know. So we'll kind of keep our ears peeled and our eyes peeled, and we want to know what's going on. But yeah, on the surface, I think, and I've said this about 3 times on the surface, but it's just so sad to see. You know, they worked together in kind of harmony for a long time, and more recently it became a fractious relationship. But you never want to see it end up in court, and I don't see how this will help Crawford now down the big fights he's wanted for so long. You know, PBC don't look in any hurry to give him the Spence fight. Josh Taylor moving up from 140 could have been a big fight via Top Rank. It seems like those bridges are completely burned now with the lawsuit. Never say never in boxing, of course, but it doesn't seem to serve either party. Now, obviously, there's a moral and ethical objective to taking someone to court. It's not just about serving your own interests, but we wait to see what evidence Crawford's team provide. But for the moment, it just seems like a sad end to what was, at one point, a solid relationship. Now, obviously, I want to know what you guys think, and this is a polarising development that's going to cause a lot of emotive responses, I'm sure, on both sides of the debate, but try and keep it as clean as you can, and I'll respond to some of the comments as I go. I'm learning about this at the same time, I guess all of you are, but I thought it best to put a video out about it and just, you know, sample the audience and see what you guys think as well. So let me know. Meanwhile, I'll be back with Reflections Monday 4:30 and the next FLEXpectations next week Thursday at the same time. Thank you all for watching, and I'll see you all soon. Cheers.